other thing you talked about, you wanted to understand your hunger and your fullness. And this is tremendously important because, again, it's just all chemical. I mean, there's mindset, but there's also chemistry. So the technical word for this is satiation or satiety. How do you know you've had enough? So do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, well, part of knowing you've had enough, I mean, part of this is the type of food you're eating too, because certain foods don't actually give you fullness. Like if you're eating high sugar, high processed foods, they actually interfere with your hormones, your insulin and your, there's two other hormones, ghrelin is one of them. And that's the one that actually, I think it's the one that tells you when you're hungry, it's your ghrelin hormone. So what happens?
The other one is leptin.
Leptin, thank you. It wasn't coming to mind.
Yeah.
So those hormones, when they get out of balance, when we're eating these high processed sugary foods, they're not working properly. So part of it, so it's kind of a two-step process, is that you've got to get yourself to off those foods, eat less of them, and and include more of the whole foods, right? Plant-based foods. Those foods are big in fiber, and they'll allow you to actually have your body empty when it's supposed to, and your whole digestion will work properly because your hormones will get balanced. So then you can actually tune into your hunger and your fullness. So it's kind of a two-step process. The first is knowing what kind of foods you're eating. And then secondly, being able to actually pay attention to it too. But you're not going to find it if you're eating those types of foods because people tell me all the time, I'm never hungry. I just eat, but I don't actually feel hungry. And I'm like, interesting. Either you're not allowing yourself to empty or to get, hungry, or you're just, your hormones aren't working. So you're not able to sense it, so.
Yeah. So there's an interesting thing for me that I discovered. When you eat, it takes about 20 minutes for your brain to get the message that it's full, but it only takes 2 minutes to eat the quantity of calories you need. So what do you do for those 18 minutes?
Wow.
So I've had to really bargain that with myself. So I eat in very small portion. And then after that, I say, I may still be hungry. I may not. I don't know. So I'm going to fill up on water, and then I'm going to wait. And like in an hour from now, if it's actual hunger, I'll eat more, So I always have the option of eating more, but first I wait. And I'm always surprised, like 20 minutes later, it's like, wow, I really was full. And one thing I found is not to let myself get too hungry, because if I get really hungry, then I just can't stop after the small portion.
That is such a good point. Me too. I mean, that must be the inner mammal, right? Because it's like you're trying to overcompensate for that hunger, and you're just eating. And it doesn't even matter what you're eating. You're so hungry. You're just grabbing things too.
Yes,
so
because in the animal world, it was a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
And despite all the heartwarming nature videos, if I didn't eat it, then the animal next to me would eat it. So I had to eat it as fast as I could before it would be gone. With hunger motivated that. Hunger is cortisol. And you're like, if you don't fill up, you're going to die.
Yeah, hunger is cortisol. Isn't that interesting? I love that, because there are a lot of my clients and people who are afraid of hunger too, which is also an interesting thing, right? Like there's actually a fear of the hunger. And I try to work with them and just go, well, let's go there and explore that a little bit, because it's just a message from the body that it's time to eat soon. And I actually use a hunger scale with my clients so that they can start to understand when they're getting just a little bit hungry versus really hungry, versus like what we're talking about. Like you do want to eat before you get too hungry. So the idea is to really tune into that hunger so you can really manage your weight if you can manage and understand your hunger.
Because so I have tremendous compassion for people who fear hunger, because I learned that was one of my mother's big problems. So when she was a kid, her family, she literally went hungry when she was young.
Oh, yes.
And imagine how scary that is, that you're a kid and you're hungry, and the adults around you are just like, I can't do anything about that, So that's really a huge, terrifying thing, which is a huge cortisol circuit. And then in the future, anytime you get hungry, it feels like a real emergency. So you just got to stuff in the food. And people may have that fear of hunger for a variety of reasons. So one might have been economic, which was my mother's case, but another may have been parental neglect, and another may have been parental cruelty, which is sometimes used where parents, deprive their children of food for some reason. Mm-hmm. So any of those may trigger a huge cortisol pathway. And the bottom line is, if you discover that pathway, then you can let it go because you see it through adult eyes. But mostly people don't want to discover it because it's so painful to go back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very painful experience to have had that. And yes, and going there would be difficult, but it is there is that reward or big benefit to you if you can do that, right? Because certainly hunger is just a message from our body telling us it's time to eat. But yeah, no, that's a very good point. I'm really glad you brought that up. That's really actually helping me understand the fear of hunger too.
Yeah.
A little better.
So I'd like to talk more about emotional eating, which you brought up before. So you said that when you were in college, you were under a lot of stress and that's why you ate. But often we explain our stress in superficial, socially acceptable ways. And that helps us to put on a good face, but it's not the real reason for our stress. So I don't know if you had any deeper thoughts about your stress at that time.
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, like what was the underlying stresses, right, that I was experiencing? What was causing the stress? And, for me, it was the first time I was away from home. So, of course, that. But I think there was the social parts of it, right? The status games, which I love your status games book. I've been listening to that one. Yeah, I mean, the serotonin from social is so interesting. Our social status, I'm sure that was playing a big role because I was shocked by the number of people that I could not relate to, let's just say. Like, I felt like I was not making friends easily when I first got there. And then, so that was one of it. It was the social aspects, I think, of being away from my friends that I had and trying to make new friends and not knowing where I fit in, right? In the inner mammal, aren't we always trying to figure out where we fit, right? I did eventually get into some groups, which really helped, and started playing sports and doing the things that I enjoy and then meeting people that way. But the other pressure I think was just being not all or nothing, but I was very much I don't like to call myself a perfectionist, but it's the other thing that you talk about that I learned from your book was needing to do things like always optimally. Like, so my coursework, so all of my study, I just couldn't do it part way. I had to go all in, and like I tried so hard and I studied really hard, but I would do the thing where I would like wait till the last minute. So a lot of stress came through because I wanted to do really well, but I also didn't know how to manage my time, or my reward system was such that I would go to the beach or I would go distract, right? I'm a good distractor, I realize now I was very good at the cortisol distract. Like, yeah. I love how you say wait, right? Is what you say, wait, and then like do something, but come back to it and solve the problem, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think what I did is I just distracted and I didn't really solve the problem until it became so, right, that last minute, like you're going to fail if you don't start studying. So all of that, I think, contributed to my stress. It's just the way that I was trained as a child. Let's just blame it on that. The way I developed these patterns as a child, they weren't really working for me.
I see the underlying pattern here, which is because studying, you have control over that. You could open the book whenever you want, but you don't have control over whether or not you please the professor. And so maybe you put it into the neural template of, I'm trying to please this person, but I anticipate that I'm going to fail to please this person. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, definitely. I definitely came from a pleasing environment. In my family, we all were trying to please. So I definitely grew up as a people pleaser. So yeah, I'm sure that was happening. Like I I need to please everyone. I need to please, like, yeah, the professor, my friends, my mom didn't really care, but I mean, I was always trying to, do the right thing, and but yet I wasn't always doing the actions to do that, even though I knew that's. But I think what's so interesting, what you taught me, is that I needed to meet my own needs. I needed to do it for myself, right? Like, here I was doing it for the wrong reasons. So if I had done it to please me because I cared about it, then I probably would have gotten to work and then gone and done all the other things that I wanted to do, rather than going and doing things and then not knowing it, just distracting and then coming back to it. It was a pattern of avoidance, basically. Yeah.
So I understand that very well because my husband is like that. So I was the opposite of that, but I'm not saying it's better, but just to give an example of how deep our old patterns were. So what I learned actually later from a therapist, so I'll put it into her words, like, I decided that you can't please anyone, so I'm not even going to try. So I never tried to please anyone because I thought, the hell with you. I'm going to just put my energy into pleasing you and fail. So why should I try to please you at all? So when I got to college, I was ecstatic about the fact that I could pick whatever I wanted to eat. I thought, wow, that's great. But I was not on a meal plan. And most people in college are on a meal plan. And I didn't want to do that for so many reasons. So I wanted to be free to graze in my own way. I didn't like walking into the cafeteria and having that high school feeling and the noise level and but I was really rather antisocial, I must admit. And, but also I knew that I could not resist. If I saw all that food there every day, that first I would eat it, but then I would also hate it because, even if the vegetables are overcooked and the meat is greasy and whatever, so I wanted to do my own thing. And I remember that where I had my lunch, they had soft ice cream that you could get from your own machine. And this was like, I was in heaven. And I would just have that for lunch. So I wasn't overeating, I was just having soft ice cream and a cup of tea. I thought, well, this is a lot of dairy and protein.
Calcium. Calcium
and you could do your own serving. So I wasn't having too much. But I was not doing the social part that people tend to do. And I vaguely remember one day I saw everybody going into the cafeteria when the meal plan people started. And I thought, I should probably be doing that because I'm not really, connecting. And so I did it once and I just hated it. So every choice, like, that's why I focus on trade-offs. Like, there's no easy answer because we all have limited energy. And if you put your energy into this, then you have less energy for that.
I love that concept of trade-off. That really helped me. I highlighted that in the book because I've been one of those people who tries to do everything and tries to pull in all the information. So, but that's not possible, so just understanding that was my inner mammal doing that, right? The trade-off, trying to understand there is the trade-off. I mean, it really helped me your books just really helped me understand these cycles I was in. I even put them on a piece of paper in a circle. So I'd write down what I was doing and then draw the lines. And then that's what would happen. And then that would happen. And that would happen. That would happen. And I labeled that current cycle, right? And then I would another piece of paper and then put in, what do I want to create over here? For me, I'm very visual and I actually see those in my head sometimes when I'm thinking about it. So, because really to me, if we're trying to change our habits, which is what I teach, not only are we losing weight, but we're actually changing the habits that are causing the weight gain or the problem that we're having is that we need to look at that cycle that's causing the habit and then create new ones. So your book just is like, to me, it's like once you understand it, Joe Dispenza is one of my teachers. I don't know if you know who he is, but he says that, let's see if I can say it right. Knowledge is the precursor to experience. So basically, that's what I think is happening when you study this work is you're getting the knowledge underneath it so that you can then apply it, right?
Yeah.
When it's happening, you're like, oh, that's the brain. That's my inner mammal. And the other part of it is it takes the shame out of it for me because so many people, they think they're wrong and they're doing it wrong. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I mean, it's not working for you, but you're not actually doing it wrong per se. You're doing it based on what you learned at a young age or you talk about the two myelinated periods, right? The young period and then the high school period. So I said, we're actually doing it wrong. We're doing it the way we were taught or the way we would absorbed the way to do it. So now we just need to be aware of that and see what we can do to change it. And then we'll get different results in our life. So that's really how I've really viewed it. And I just think it's really exciting that we have this type of, that we have the ability to do this.
Yeah.